there's so many names and words we can use to describe the space that we're trying to enter when we transcend the personal mind. We can acquire an enormous amount of knowledge. You can have an enormous amount of information in our heads, and that's still not the path. Direct experience is pretty much the journey from the head to the heart. It's where we feel love for ourselves and for each other. It's the arising of what is beyond the chattering personal mind with all the things it always has to say to us. And that's really where we're trying to go. And it's not to dismiss the personal mind, the subjective mind, but it's to understand what it's doing, how it processes. We need it here to be in this human realm, on this planet. We need the mind. Right? It's helping us maneuver and tell us what's going on through our senses. But when we enter the path, we begin to understand and we begin to seek something that's beyond our five senses. And the direct experience of what that is, again, there's many names for it. Nature of mind is a beautiful way to talk about it. It's our true nature. When we do transcend this kind of personal mind, it's a very different experience. It's a pivotal shift in how we experience our human condition and reality. It's actually a shift in how we perceive reality. So that's what we're trying to get to on the path. And the mind processing of, here's what's going on outside of us, and we need to pay attention to all this, and here's your to-do list, and here's what happened yesterday and 20 years ago, and here's what's going to happen 10 years from now and tomorrow. And the mind is consumed with all of this. And pretty much dictating our behavior with the thoughts that are arising. Right? In any traditional path, in any spiritual path, we're going to be directed towards being aware of the thoughts that are arising and inquiring whether we really need to listen to whatever the thought is that's going on. Most of our thoughts are concerned with the past or the future. There's not that many thoughts that are actually in the present moment. Some teachers say there are no thoughts about the present. You can only be in the present. You actually can't have a thought about it. But most of what our mind is doing is telling us what we need to be worried about. And that is kind of our pattern as a culture, to listen to outdated thoughts of the past that have no relevance to who we are today and are of no benefit. Most of the thoughts that we have, particularly negative thoughts, self-criticism, self-reproach, there's no benefit to negative thinking. And on the spiritual path, we work with two major aspects. One is awareness of how our mind works, how the personal, kind of individual mind works, so we can stop listening to it or cut through it. Okay, and the other aspect is the direct experience of what transcends the mind. Our lineage is a Vajrayana lineage. It's devotionally based. And a lot of our focus, a lot of our interest in Vajrayana is in what is beyond this three-dimensional plane that we are in, that we call Earth. Cosmology in Buddhism explains this billion world system that we are a very small part of. And just knowing about it starts to kind of allow us to be thinking about it, to be seeking it, to seek encounters with other realms, higher beings, who are actually, if we have a Buddhist view, always waiting for us to ask them for help. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be a part of how we can progress as a humanity on this planet. But just to know that is this second aspect, which is the transcendence and the entering into this nature of mind, clear light, where we do have a much vaster, much bigger picture of what is going on that we are a part of and that we are descendants of also. And some people treat Buddhism as more kind of a symbolic understanding. They see it more as kind of metaphors rather than literal. When we hear about, advanced beings here on earth, like Padmasambhava, being born out of a lotus. He wasn't born out of a person, out of a woman. Some people want to look at that as a metaphor, and that's fine. Some people believe it literally, and that's fine. So the teachings and the aspects of Tibetan Buddhism are meant to meet us where we're at. It's not to kind of pressure us or convince us, to talk us into believing something that occurred that feels uncomfortable for us or doesn't resonate with us. So however we want to meet what we're hearing about in Buddhism is perfect for each of us. And Buddha Shakyamuni he emphasized while he was alive, don't listen to what I'm telling you. Don't believe what I'm saying. Find out for yourself. Everybody's path is unique. In the West, Western culture is particularly difficult for Tibetan lamas to teach because we have kind of illnesses, right, of the mind. And these illnesses are really wrapped around a lack of self-esteem, right? Not having a sense of self-love. Actually not even realizing how amazing we each are. How wondrous and incredible it is to be here on this earth in what we call precious human bodies. And so a lot of Tibetan lamas feel that we as a Western culture need to have a healthier mental outlook about ourselves first. And then that transfers over to everybody else. In every tradition, we can find there's an emphasis on loving other people, caring for other people, seeing other people, acknowledging their beauty and their worth and their value, and not focusing so much on what we may see as negative traits around others. But before we can do that, we have to do that with ourselves first. Okay? If we try to love other people, that's wonderful. But if it's not inside us first, it's a much more difficult practice. And when that self-love does arise, which of course it does in the awakening, in the direct experience, the transcendence, there is such an amazing joy, there's such an amazing peace, and there's the recognition that this love and this peace and this joy are a part of who we really are. And so when that arises in us, it just naturally flows over to everybody else. And this aspect is kind of true we can apply it to many other things, meaning the way we see things is the way that is the motivation often for our behavior and our actions. So if we are filled with love, we are seeing others through the lens of love, right? If we're feeling self-reproach, we're seeing others through that lens. We see the world and other people according to how we see ourselves. And many times that lens is conditioned into us from a very early age. Our culture, our peers, our families, our education, everything that is in our environment when we are young gets absorbed. So if we come from a more, a less functional family, we may have tendencies to be more negative. So we just want to be aware of that, so we know what we're working with as we're coming into a more awakened state. So Buddhism actually works closely with therapeutic modalities. Right? There's a lot of us, myself included, who have spent years in therapy before I even could enter the path. Right? And that's very helpful and very beautiful. And there's a lot of therapeutic techniques that now borrow from traditions like Buddhism and Christianity as well, and Hindu. So everything is kind of, interconnected. And we can use all the things that we're doing to be on the path. Therapy is a form of the spiritual path, for sure. And we want to be able to know where we are at. How much is this personal mind of mine creating unhappiness? Right? Or we may just feel, I don't really know what's going on, but I feel like I should be happy and I don't feel happy. In general, right? In moments of my life, of course, there's joy and laughter and happiness. But when we look at kind of the whole picture, are we moving through life with this deep place of joy, of happiness, of wanting to be here, of excitement? Because all those qualities are part of the awakened state. And what's another big part of the awakened state is feeling like I am totally fine just the way I am. We all have different tendencies, different things we like or dislike. In the awakened state, we can still be individuals. We can still be human here. We accept with joy our individuality instead of finding an issue with it in ourselves and then finding an issue with it in other people. One of the major reasons for conflict on the planet is because there's people that disagree. They see things differently. And in the awakening, when you see someone different from yourself, you celebrate that. Oh my gosh, this person doesn't think the same way I do. Let me find out how they think. Let me learn something. It's the approach to life from an awakened state is very much from the place of I'm fine and you're fine too. As a culture, Western culture, we kind of have no problem complaining about our governments and each other and all the things that are going wrong, but we have a difficult time telling each other we love each other. Right? We have a difficult time saying, I love you. Right? That's a little backwards. In higher realms, they start with that. Thank you, I love you. Let's have communion or a conversation or an encounter. It's always started from love. So there's a huge contrast that we can see from kind of this human condition, what we have learned in our culture, and higher, what we call advanced beings, how they live, how they see things, how they conduct themselves. And on the path, this is one of the major, I would say the major shift. We call it the path of seeing. We'll be talking about that more later. This shift from this human condition of what's wrong, let me fix it, to everything's fine, how can I help you? A shift from self-interest to interest in others is the major shift on the path. We call it Bhumi 1, the Bhumi of the joyous. So with that, let's just sit in our most comfortable position. We can move during meditation. There's no kind of fixed rule about not moving. And we're just going to kind of come into a space of awareness. And Buddhism and even Hindu practice is relatively new in the West. And one of the kind of gateways into meditation is called mindfulness meditation. In mindfulness meditation, there's nothing really required of us. We're not doing some sophisticated technique. We're just here. We're just aware. And we are aware that we are aware. So in meditation, we don't shut down our senses. Our senses are here. We may have our eyes closed. We can do an open eye meditation. We're still hearing things. There's still sensation coming in. In Vajrayana, everything that we're experiencing in meditation, we take onto the path with us. We're not requiring it to be hear a pin drop silence. We're just, especially when we're just starting meditation, and really all through the journey, at any point, whether we're sitting on a cushion or not, we can just tune into what we're aware of. We're not trying to manipulate anything. We're just present. It's kind of a be here now meditation. And that's what mindfulness is really about. And we'll also be aware that thoughts are still arising and passing through our consciousness. We may have some things in our life that are troubling us, and those thoughts are going to be louder. What to do about this or that. We would consider those more worry thoughts. They're more pervasive. They interrupt our peace. When we come into meditation, we could give ourselves permission to not listen to those thoughts right now. There'll be more time later for that if we want them. A lot of thoughts are because the mind is in overdrive. The egoic mind works primarily from a state of fear. So thoughts that are arising are around safety. What we need to be safe. At the same time, inside of each one of us is a natural inclination, a natural seeking to be happy. Often, because our minds are troubled, we don't feel that we can even think about whether we're happy or not. That doesn't even come into play. We're just trying to cope. What's in the forefront for most of us is what a crisis of the day is that we have to resolve before we can be happy. So the mind is kind of presenting us with a plate of things we need to fix. And once all these things are resolved, then we can move on to trying to find what makes us happy. Trying to find a happy life. On the spiritual path, we realize that that plate will never be empty. There will never be a time where the mind's going to say, okay, I'm done, you're fine. I have nothing else to present to you. So we recognize that in order to be happy, we have to start overcoming thoughts, attachments, desires, the perpetual hamster wheel that's going on inside of us. And we call this in Buddhism taming the mind. The mind is referred to as the jewel ornament of liberation on the spiritual path in Buddhism. Our minds are extremely powerful. And we can use these powerful instruments to guide us into awakened states. At some point they do get left behind, these minds, but they can be used to help us on the path. But we need to tame them first. And meditation is one tool to help us do that.